Hey everyone, welcome back to this explainer brought to you by Forge College. Last time, we dipped our toes into the introduction to the Solana CLI. Well, today we're taking that knowledge and bridging the gap into a true engineering walkthrough. We are going to look at configuring clusters and wallets. This is the moment where we actually wire up our environment to talk to the network. Let's get right into it. All right, here's our master schematic for today. We'll start with a welcome to the blueprint, move into targeting your network cluster, generating your keypair wallet, verifying your setup, and finally, looking at our next steps on Solana.
Okay, Section 1. Welcome to the blueprint. Let's dive straight into the core components our CLI actually needs to operate.
Right out of the box, your CLI is basically blind and has zero identification. It absolutely needs two distinct things to work. First up, the cluster endpoint. Think of this as the CLI's personal address book. It literally tells the CLI exactly which network, neighborhood, or server to send its commands to. I mean, do you want to talk to the real-world mainnet where the actual real money lives? Or do you want to play it safe in the devnet sandbox? The endpoint is how we tell the CLI exactly where to go.
So the second core element here is the keypair file. If the endpoint is where we're going, the keypair file is who we are when we finally get there. It's basically your cryptographic ID badge. Without it, sure, you can look around the network all you want, but you can't actually do anything. You absolutely need this badge to prove you have the authority to sign transactions and make things happen.
Now, whenever you fire off a command, the CLI automatically hunts in very specific places for its instructions. This perfectly illustrates the default engineering spec sheet. By default, it looks up the config.yaml file to find your endpoint, and it hunts down an ID file in the .config/solana directory for your keypair. Honestly, knowing exactly where the machine automatically looks for these defaults, that is the very first step to mastering it.
Moving right along to Section 2, targeting your network cluster. Let's wire up that network connection. Just like any good architect, we really need to inspect our current construction site before we start wildly laying bricks, right? Running Solana config get does exactly that. It prints out exactly what your CLI is currently configured to do. You always want to run this first to avoid any nasty surprises. Because trust me, you do not want to realize you were pointing at mainnet when you thought you were safely in a test environment. So you basically have two ways to control the CLI from here. First, there are persistent settings using the solana config set command. This hardwires your choice straight into the config file so you never have to repeat yourself. Then, on the flip side, you have per command overrides. Think of these as temporary bypass switches. By just slapping on a flag like --URL to a single command, you override the default for just that one specific action. And boom, it snaps right back to normal right after. For our explainer today, we actually want to permanently set our target to devnet. So by running this command, we're wiring our CLI straight to the devnet endpoint. This is our safe sandbox. It's where fake money rules the day, and honestly, where a fat finger decimal point or a silly typo won't end up costing you real SOL. It is literally the perfect place to build an experiment. All right, Section 3, generating your keypair wallet. Let's get to cutting those keys and minting your digital ID badge. Okay, check this out. This is the exact command you're going to use to generate a brand new keypair. Now, look closely at the end of the command there. See how we're specifying the out file as devnet-ID? This is an absolute necessity. You've got to use clear, descriptive file names. Because I promise you, the absolute fastest way to a catastrophic mistake is naming every single thing id.json and then accidentally using a test key when you meant to use a production key holding real assets. No way we're doing that. So, once we've generated that shiny new keypair, we need to bolt it down by firing off Solana config set again, but this time throwing in the --keypair flag. We are making this specific ID badge our persistent default. So from here on out, whenever we ask the CLI to do its thing, it knows exactly which file to grab to sign the transaction. Now, what's really interesting here is how we actually verify the key exists. We definitely do not want to open up the raw file and expose our super secret private key, right? Instead, we just ask the CLI to safely print out the public address using the pub key command. If it prints out an address, well, you know for sure the file exists, it's totally valid, and the CLI can read it without a hitch. Which brings us to Section 4, verifying your setup. Let's test this newly wired circuit. What we've just built together is a core, completely reproducible workflow. It's basically a shell-scriptable checklist. Step 1, set the URL. Step 2, create the keypair. Step 3, set that keypairs as the default. And Step 4, check the balance. You can literally deploy this exact same sequence on any fresh machine, your laptop, some remote server, whatever, to get instantly up and running. But hold on, to check a balance and actually do cool things on the network, we need some gas in the tank. Luckily, on DevNet, we can literally conjure test funds right out of thin air. We use the Solana airdrop command to request a little bit of test SOL. This step is absolutely crucial because it ensures our brand new account actually exists on the network's ledger and has the funds required to pay for future transaction fees.
And here it is, the ultimate circuit test, Solana balance. When you run this, the CLI looks at your default config to find the network, grabs your default keypair to identify you, reaches all the way across the internet to the cluster, asks for the ledger state, and hopefully returns a value. If a number pops up on your screen, congratulations, your machine is successfully connected and actively reading data.
Hey, remember those per command overrides we talked about just a minute ago? Well, here they are in action. Take a look at this command. We're checking a balance, sure, but we are explicitly passing a testnet URL and a totally different keypair path. This is awesome because it lets us test a completely different network and key dynamically without messing up that beautifully stable, persistent configuration we just spent time building for DevNet.
Of course, sometimes the circuit just shorts out. If things aren't working, just run through this rapid-fire debugging checklist. First, hit config get to verify your paths aren't pointing somewhere weird. Second, check your keypair file permissions. If that file is locked down, the CLI literally can't read it. And finally, test your RPC reachability. Basically, just make sure your internet connection is actually letting you reach that DevNet server in the first place.
Okay, section 5, next steps on Solana. Let's see how this all builds our foundation moving forward. Now, before we wrap this up, I really want to firmly reinforce these core operational principles. You must always strictly separate your dev and production environments using descriptive file names. I can't stress that enough. Also, lean heavily on those temporary override flags for one-off actions instead of constantly changing your global defaults. And please back up your config files and keys. Honestly, these basic safety habits are exactly what separate the amateurs from the professionals. So, this stable, super reliable environment we just put together, it's exactly what we need for our upcoming lesson, querying account and program state. Next time around, we're going to use this exact DevNet configuration to start fetching live on-chain data, peering into the inner workings of Solana programs directly from our terminal. It's going to be incredible. So, I'll leave you with this. Are your endpoint and keypair actually ready to go? Or are you just one typo away from a total mainnet disaster? Make absolutely sure your setup is bulletproof before moving on. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. And hey, to dive deeper into this subject and really master your Web3 skills, head on over to forge.college. I'll see you in the next one. Stay curious.